How long are you going to leave? I can't get the insurance money until you kick the bucket, huh? The husband, who had spent all the family's savings, said this. Can someone really say such a thing? Even if their love has cooled, to a wife who has been given only 6 months to live? I was beyond angry with my husband, who even boasted about spending that money on his mistress. I was completely disgusted with him. It's you who has a short time left, isn't it? What? My name is Christine, a 40-year-old working housewife. My husband, James, is 45 and took over his father's company, becoming its president. His mother serves as a chairman, and his father passed away about 5 years ago at the age of 70. He had an internal organ disorder, and the doctors said he had lived longer than expected. After his death, the company was taken over by his mother, who is now 75. But she is still energetic and effectively runs the company. The reason I know so much about my husband's company is that I worked there as an office worker. I used to work in fashion design until I was 38. I've always loved fashion, and it's not an exaggeration to say I worked hard to dress beautifully. Makeup, clothes, bags, women can shine with all these things. That's why I wanted to create clothes that can make any woman shine. I worked hard with that in mind. But I am also a woman. It would be a lie to say I didn't want to get married. It was tough considering my age, but I knew I couldn't change my single status without doing anything. So I decided to participate in matchmaking to find a husband. That's where I met my husband. He was kind and well-mannered, and I fell for his personality. So after a year of dating, we got married, but I didn't know he was a president until he had been dating for half a year. People tend to approach me just because I am a president. That's why I kept quiet during the matchmaking. But I couldn't find the right time to tell you. Christine, I'm sorry for telling you so late. My husband wasn't trying to deceive me, and his lying due to his position was unavoidable. Rather, his sincerity in apologizing made me fall for him even more, and I decided to marry him. However, as soon as we got married, he showed his true colors. While we were dating, he used to say, "Let's both keep working hard. Christine, I want you to do the job you love." But a few months into our marriage, he changed his tune. "How long are you going to work? You were supposed to help out with the office work at my company, weren't you? Everything is ready arranged with my mother, so hurry up." He practically forced me to quit my job. I had no choice but to quit my job because if I didn't, he would become uncontrollable and violent. To settle things peacefully, quitting was the only option for me. Besides, I like my mother-in-law. She is a solid worker yet always well-dressed and can be best described as a lady of elegance. She is strict yet kind, like someone straight out of England. As someone who admires beauty, I respected my mother-in-law. Plus, I lost my parents early on. I didn't want to upset my mother-in-law, even if she was only related by marriage. My husband is tyrannical, and in our house, it's taken for granted that I do all the housework. He seriously believes that a wife should serve her husband. Seeing his mother, I can't understand how he could think that way. If I'm even slightly negligent with housework, he berates me. "Don't neglect that housework, you idiot. Housework is a woman's job, and you can't even do that? You're beyond stupid. You're useless. Every day, my husband verbally abuses me at will. And it's not just me he berates. He sees his mother as an enemy. I wish that old hag would just drop dead. My husband wants to be the top at his company, but he can't achieve that because of my mother-in-law. It seems he views her presence as an obstacle. I'm sick of hearing him say such awful things every day. Honestly, I regret marrying him, but it was my own haste that was to blame. Still, the thought of severing ties with my mother-in-law was honestly unpleasant. But even with such a despicable man, I had resolved to stay married to him as long as my mother-in-law was around. However, in our second year of marriage, my husband started coming home extremely late. At first, he said it was due to overtime or meetings, but it was excessively late even for that. I became suspicious of my husband's clearly unusual behavior when he would come home late at night and head straight to the bath. When I checked his smartphone while he was bathing, as I suspected, he was having an affair. Moreover, the other woman appeared to be a young woman in her 20s working at the bar. I was able to find out where she worked from the information on his phone and pondered what to do next. I thought I could divorce him at this point, but doing so could mean losing my job and becoming a complete stranger to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is truly kind. Initially, my husband intended not to pay me for my work, assuming it was okay since I was family, but my mother-in-law sternly corrected him. Listen, Kristen is working in our house as a bride. It's shameful to make her work without pay despite that. My mother-in-law lectured my husband impressively. She knew how much I admired her, so she often invited me for coffee. I wanted to spend more time with her, enjoying coffee in her stylish coffee cups. Facing the risk of losing my husband, my job, and the mother-in-law I respected all at once, I couldn't make such a decision overnight. A few days later, when my husband was out and the company was closed, a call came in. It was from the hospital regarding my husband's health checkup. It seemed my mother-in-law was also called in. It was the familiar hospital of my in-laws. Arriving at the hospital, I met up with my mother-in-law. Wondering what it could be, we went to see the doctor together, and the doctor informed us that my husband had only 6 months to live. It was the same disease as my father-in-law. My mind went blank, and my mother-in-law looked downcast. It seems the chances of inheritance are low, but not zero, so we had requested a check-up together. To prevent my husband from becoming self-destructive upon hearing his prognosis, the family was informed first. How should I tell my husband? My mother-in-law offered to tell him, but she looked pained. She must have gone through this when announcing my father-in-law's time left. With that thought, I couldn't let my mother-in-law bear the burden of conveying a family member's limited time left. Maybe I should let him do as he pleases. Our relationship had grown cold, and he would probably want to spend more time with someone he loves. Besides, it seemed cruel to divorce a man with only half a year to live and demand compensation. With the insurance money from my husband and his remaining 6 months, I decided to let him live as he wished. Waiting for his return late that night, he finally came home. When I spoke to him, he seemed annoyed, saying, "I'm busy. If it's not important, you will regret it." So I replied seriously, "It's very important." Surprised by my tone, he stopped and I continued. "Today I was called by the hospital." "The hospital?" "Yes. Please calm down and listen. You've been given 6 months leave. You don't have much time left, so live as you wish." I intended to speak calmly, but in my haste, I only conveyed the conclusion. 6 months left to live? I see, understood. He said that and disappeared into the bedroom. I thought he must be shocked to learn about his short lifespan, but then he stopped coming home. We rarely saw each other at work, so I didn't even know if he was coming to the office. It couldn't be helped. I didn't want to see my weakened husband, and he probably didn't want to be seen either. However, my thinking was wrong. 1 month after the prognosis, numerous reminders arrived at home. They were for utilities like gas, water, and electricity. Shocked, I checked the bank account for automatic withdrawals, and it was at zero. This account was in my husband's name. Thinking it impossible, I checked the saving bank and a flex deposit, only to find them all cancelled or emptied. Even with a prognosis of only 6 months to live, this was going too far. I called my husband and screamed, "Where did you put all our savings?" Then he replied, "I spent it all on her." "Huh? You have life insurance anyway, huh?" "What?" I was shocked and lost for words. During that time, my husband revealed everything. He brought her a car and said that marrying me was the biggest thing on his life. He ranted, "I never thought you'd get a terminal diagnosis. I was right to get life insurance on you. Die soon, will you?" He said that and hung up the phone. He thought I was the one who had been given a terminal diagnosis and justified his spending because I didn't have long to live. The thought that I had decided to let him live his remaining life as he pleased made me want to kick myself. At that moment, I resolved to take revenge on my husband. Later, I went to my mother-in-law and told her everything. "I can't tolerate this anymore. I don't mind if I go to hell, and I'm prepared to be resented by you, mother-in-law. But still, I will take revenge on that man." My mother-in-law listened silently and then deeply bowed her head. "As his mother, I apologize to you. There's no way I could resent you." "But he's your only son, isn't he?" I thought it was natural for her to resent me for taking revenge on her son. "No, I have no right to resent you. I raised him to be like Dad. Your anger and hatred justified. And you have the right to take revenge." Mother-in-law said she wanted him to live the rest of his life peacefully as he had less than 6 months to live. But knowing that he thought I had a terminal diagnosis and even wished for my early death, she couldn't consider him her son anymore. "But I hope you will reconsider the divorce. If you do that, I can't be your mother anymore." "Mother, I know it's presumptuous. I'm just a lonely old lady, but I hope you will continue to think of me as your mother." Her words made me want to cry. She assured me that she would spare no effort to make him pay for what he did. Things moved quickly from there. My husband thought I had no money left, but with my mother-in-law's support, I could hire a private detective and a lawyer. I wasn't sure how much compensation I could get from a dying husband, but they assured me they could arrange the divorce. Based on the evidence from the private detective, I first called the mistress. It seemed my husband had moved in with the mistress, but I told her, "Come along to the specified location. If you tell my husband or don't come along, I'll take legal action." I hung up knowing full well I couldn't take any legal action, but she showed up alone at the cafe. "Are you his wife? You're just as terrible as James said. This is a threat. Struggling because he's about to die?" The mistress was a 29-year-old woman. I was appalled when I found out my husband was involved with a woman more than 10 years his junior, but seemed she only saw him as a money source. "So, you want the money back? Just so you know, I never asked for it. He gave me gifts on his own." "That's not the issue. I just came to warn you, staying with him will only lead you to hell." I said that and left. I had come to see if she would be saddened to hear about my husband's terminal diagnosis, but it seemed there was no need to worry. Honestly, the mistress didn't matter to me. I was full of anger, but my mind was forced on punishing my husband. When I got home, to my surprise, my husband, whom I hadn't seen for months, returned home. Having been married for 2 years, I could tell he was clearly emaciated. Well, he always overdid it with alcohol and cigarettes, shortening his own life. Furious, my husband yelled, "Why aren't you dead yet? You were diagnosed with a terminal illness, and you dare to threaten my Cindy, you harlot." He was ranting and raving, out of breath, spitting saliva, and looked far from healthy. It had been 3 months since his terminal diagnosis. There wasn't much time left until his end. "Die? I can't. I'm healthy." "Huh? Don't tell me you lied about having a terminal illness." "No, I haven't lied. The one with the terminal illness is you, remember?" "Huh?" My husband seemed unable to grasp the situation, standing there with his mouth open, then started laughing derisively. "So, you've finally lost your mind, huh? You were always crazy. You better get in your coffin before you get any crazier. Looks like you'll be heading to the grave soon anyway." He didn't listen at all and kept insisting that I shouldn't mess with his mistress. I was just appalled and couldn't even argue. However, the next day, I received a call that my husband had collapsed and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. After contacting my mother-in-law, I headed to the hospital room where my husband was ranting. "She knew about my terminal diagnosis and kept quiet. That's not what we agreed on." "Please calm down." "Shut up. Don't tell me what to do." My husband was uncontrollable and no one could approach him. But my mother-in-law walked in resolutely and slapped him. "Such a shameful display from a grown man. This is what happens when you don't listen to others." "You old hag, did you just hit me?" "Yes, and I'll do it again if necessary. Can't you understand with words? Neglecting your wife, playing around, and squandering all the savings. No one wants to hear what such a person has to say." She then turned on her heel and said, "As a chairman, I'm firing you from the company. I'm also severing our parent-child relationship." "What? What are you talking about? I'm your real son." My only child is Kristen. Let's go, Kristen. I actually have a villa. Let's live there for a while, shall we? My mother-in-law smiled at me happily, while my husband yelled, "Come back, Kristen. You're my wife." I replied, "As of today, I will be divorcing you," and left the hospital room. The lawyer I had contracted with came shortly after and demanded that my husband proceed with the divorce. He was uncontrollable and had to be restrained by several nurses. He couldn't talk that day, but later the lawyer got him to sign the divorce papers. The mistress disappeared without a trace afterward. My husband seemed genuinely in love with her, but was shocked and mentally broken by being used for money and having no one on his side. He became violent multiple times and ended up in a psychiatric ward. I found it scary that I think it's just his desires that he'll meet his end alone in an isolated room. My mother-in-law only paid for his hospitalization out of a final act of kindness, but nothing else. I'm staying at her villa, feeling somewhat tense in the luxurious house. Don't be tense. You're my daughter. You couldn't be selfish before, so feel free to be a little spoiled now. She smiled kindly at me. I hesitated but gathered the courage to say, "Then, I'd like to have another coffee together." "That's a great idea. Then we must buy some exceptionally delicious cakes." As I talked with my mother-in-law and saw her happy face, I felt genuine joy and laughed from the bottom of my heart for the first time in years.